Hi everyone. I was just talking for ages on like filming and then I got really paranoid that the mic wasn't working, so I had to start again. But happy September/August. I think this will go out either today or tomorrow. Hope you're all doing well. I wasn't sure if I was going to make this podcast because I've been really struggling at the moment, but I kind of just wanted to talk about some things and I think it might be quite therapeutic, so I'm going to. I have all my notes down here on my laptop, so if I look down then that's why. Also, I want to give a trigger warning for essay stuff, and I think I'm going to go into things with a bit of detail, so that is a warning. And I also want to talk about anatomy and the words that we use for our bodies, specifically AFAB people and trans masks. But I want to reassure you that it's for good reason. The essay stuff, I want to talk about it. I'm not going to say the R word because I can't say it. Physically, I'm unable to. But I'm gonna talk about like consent and what constitutes as not consent, and but there's, like I said, good reason for it. I want to kind of talk about it to help you, if you need it, to understand what might be considered blurry lines and stuff like that. I don't know if I'm making sense, but this is just a warning. And in terms of the anatomy stuff, I also want to reassure you that it is with no judgment at all. It's coming from a trans mask person who has really struggled with using words, and I want it to be empowering for us all. I'm not trying to like push words on you or make you feel exposed or vulnerable when I use them, so I just really feel like it's important to say that before I say anything else. This is a safe space. We're all here to be held in like safety and comfort, and it's okay. But if you don't feel able to hear stuff about essay or specific words about bodies, then feel free to leave this or pause this until you feel able to, or just maybe this week's not the time, and that's totally fine. Anyway, like I said, I've got notes today. I've written it all out. I just feel like I've got a lot to say, so I'm also going to time this because it might be a long one. And also, if you notice me like looking at my screen, then that's why. But I just wanted to make sure that I've got everything and I don't miss things because it's very sensitive topics. So yeah, I knew that if I would just like let myself say whatever I want, I might go on a tangent, or I might like forget what I'm trying to say or whatever. You know the drill. You probably know the ADHD thing too, so there we go. First, I wanted to talk about my peaks and pits of September. Peak would be going to pole dancing alone, and I started driving again. I'm going to talk about pole dancing stuff a bit later, but driving, I just got back from a driving lesson like an hour ago, and in case you didn't know, I started learning to drive last year, and I did like, I don't know, 10-20 hours, I can't remember. I did like a lesson a week between May and or September, so May, June, July, August, September, 5 months of a lesson a week, so that's a lot. And I got to the point where I was almost about to take my test, but then I moved, and in Brighton most people just walk everywhere, or there's buses. A lot of people, I think I know like 2 people that have a car and drive, maybe 3. So it's not very common, and I was like, maybe I don't need to. I also didn't really have the money to, But then I did a theory test like last May, and that's only valid for 2 years. So I was like, I actually do want to save myself the trouble of like doing it again. And I went camping recently, and it was like a drive away from Brighton, and it was really nice to just get a bit further away. So even if I don't get a car at the end of this, I would still like to be able to drive so that I can rent a car and go on some adventures sometimes, or like borrow a friend's car. So I got my deposit back from my old flat, and I've used that money to pay for my driving lessons. So I've booked 10 hours, and I had my first session today, and it was okay. I was very nervous. I drank a pint of like coffee before I went, because I was like, I really want to be alert. I've been struggling a lot with disassociating and disassociation. So I was like, I need to take my ADHD meds, I need to drink coffee, I need to be as alert as possible. I don't know how it was going to affect me. So I did that, and I was like, maybe this was a mistake. And I might shit myself whilst I'm driving, but I didn't. Everything was fine. I left ample time for my stomach to settle. Lovely TMI for you. But I still was really nervous. I was learning, this is probably really boring, I don't know why, if anyone's interested, but anyways. Also the light is going in and out, so I need that to like sort itself out. What was I saying? Yeah, driving. I was learning manual last year, and this year I've decided to go for auto. So it's new car, new format, new area. It feels like I'm starting from scratch again. So it was nerve-wracking, and I was very rusty, but it was okay. Like, I drove around almost the whole time. I drove home. I did like a roundabout, and I was like, whoa, you've snuck this up on me. I'm not sure if I'm ready for a roundabout, but the driving instructor is really nice, and he was like, do you need my help? I was like, yes, please. And then he just told me when to go, and I survived. Nobody got killed. I didn't shit myself. I did disassociate a tiny bit, but it was as we were almost home, and I could like snap out of it. So that was that. That was a bit nerve-wracking, but yeah, I'm gonna have to be really mindful of that and like stop if I need to. So yeah, peak was that I'm learning to drive again. My next lesson is next week, I think, so I'm looking forward to that, and I'm hoping. I asked him like, what do you think my driving is at, like out of 10, and he was like, what do you think it is at? And I was like, 5-ish, and he was like, I would agree. Because yeah, it wasn't great, but I didn't like kill anyone, so it could have been worse, but it could have been a lot better. But I guess that's why I'm learning again. My pit is that I am really struggling with my mental health at the moment, like massively, and I think I might have to take some time off work. I've closed my shop because I can't cope, and I wanted to talk to you about it a bit. It's just really difficult, and I am really sad for myself and for the people that it's impacting, even if that's just like the people that are buying from my shop. I just feel really sad about my mental health right now. So I wanted to talk more about everything, but I like pole and stuff, but I wanted to talk about the bad stuff first so we could get that out of the way and then be happy again. So this is the big trigger warning for essay, because I'm gonna talk about it. So I have recently been accessing support from Survivors Network, and I don't know if you've been here from February or the beginning of the year, or heard me talk about this stuff before, but in February I was harassed slash assaulted by 3 different people in the space of a week. And yeah, I'm gonna talk about what happened, and sometimes I don't feel like it's necessary to talk about that, but for this instance I do feel like I want to talk about it in more detail. So I did write this out like months ago as well, so if you've heard this already, I'm sorry, but also not sorry, because we shouldn't be apologizing for talking about it. So I think the first person was, I went on a date with someone and they were treating me like a dog because they insisted that I had like a puppy play kink, even though I said no. And they were also being really pushing me to kiss them and like go further, even though I said no and stop. And I really struggle to say no because I'm scared because of things that have happened in the past. So I had to like go down the route of being like, I'm not sober enough to do this, and they were still like really pushy with it. So that was just a really scary time. And then a couple of days later I was working at a market and doing a pop-up shop, and this guy came up to me, or like I was around, and he looked at me and he was like, he shook my hand. And first of all, that took me off guard because I was like, hello, who are you? And he was like, we should really go to the local sauna. My friend works there, we should go have fun. And he wouldn't let go of my hand, and he was like, we should go to the sauna and like sleep together basically. And I was like trying to get away from him, and like he wouldn't let go, and it was just really scary. And he kept saying like, oh, you look really good and stuff, and it was just really horrible. And I had to go back to my stall and work. I reported him and he got removed from the place, and it turns out he had done this to some other trans people too. So that was really scary. And then yeah, that was horrible. And then the last thing that really like put the cherry on the top of the cake, or whatever the phrase is, was someone that I was dating for about 2 months had crossed my boundaries every single time that we met, which was like 3 times, or I think we met 4 times, and 3 of those times, the other time was like we were outside, so they couldn't really do anything. And I always thought it was like only the last time we met that was the attack or the assault, but I've realized now after a few months that it was every time, or like every time we were alone. And that has like messed me up a bit, and I feel like yeah, I'm sorry if I'm gonna like stall and say lots. It was weird because I knew something was not right after every time that we met. After the first time we met, after the second time, I just had a really weird gut feeling where I was like, I just feel really on edge. I don't know if I should stop seeing them. I didn't know if it was because like I didn't fancy them anymore, or if there was just something weird going on, or if I was just not in the right headspace. It was just a really weird gut feeling. And then after the wait, let me look at my notes because I'm feeling things. Yeah, I felt like something was weird, and wait, my brain is not working. Yeah, they were gonna stay at my house the final time that we saw each other, and I was preparing myself for what I would do if they assaulted me. And I was like, I've just got a feeling something's gonna happen tonight, and I need to be able to make sure that I can say no. I need to make sure that I am aware of like the warning signs sort of thing. And I was like, should I like call it off? Should I say no, don't come? But I was just like, oh, maybe I'm just being weird and like overly thinking this. Maybe I'm like self-sabotaging or whatever. And like I had this gut feeling that what they had done the previous times was also assault, but I was like, I feel like a lot of us do this, where we dismiss our feelings because we're told that assault happens by a stranger in an alleyway and it's violent and like physical, and you end up like with bruises and scratch marks and stuff, which definitely happens, but it's a lot less common, and it's usually someone that you trust and you know, which is really scary. And I didn't want to recognize it as that, or allow myself to recognize as I didn't want to allow myself to recognize it as that, because then you have to go through the grieving process and the like acknowledging that that's happened to you again, and in my case like again, like, and I just didn't want that to be real. And I feel like it's really shit that that happens, that it takes you ages to recognize that it is assault, because like getting a charge or a conviction for the perpetrator depends on instant reporting a lot of the time. So like getting a DNA swab by a healthcare professional, or reporting it in the moment, or like not waiting until you've messaged this person online, which was my case and has been my case multiple times, and the reason why I haven't been able to get a charge, because my messages downplayed the severity of it, because I was like I cared more about not hurting the other person's feelings. So yeah, when it takes months and years to process, you're kind of denied or robbed the time to get justice, if that makes sense. So yeah, the reason I'm talking about it is because I feel like it's really important to talk about what constitutes as assault, or the R word, because then you can either recognize it and begin healing from it, or you can recognize what happened and feel able enough to report it earlier if you want to. You don't have to. So yeah, in my case, the first time was like the first time this happened with the person that I was seeing was them not disclosing their contagious STI status until after the act, because they knew that if they had done beforehand, then I might have said let's wait, or let's not do it. And I'm not talking about like undetectable things or dormant things. I'm talking about something that I was at risk of getting, but they purposely withheld that information because that would have stopped the interaction. The second time was me hesitating and asking if we should wait, but I was in a bit of a vulnerable position with them physically, and them saying no whilst going ahead. And then the third time was me saying firmly no, nothing's gonna happen, via text, and them agreeing to that. And then when it came to being in person, compromising on my boundaries, and I initially was like, okay, we can do some things, but it has to be with protection, and them begging me to not use protection until we didn't use protection. And that was like the biggest the thing that made me feel most violated, I think, because they also slept in my bed that whole night, and I was awake and just feeling really scared and violated, as you would, while they like slept peacefully and then went off to work the next day. And then they had the audacity to message me the next morning being like, how traumatized are you? Because I had told them that it was the first time I had allowed someone to sleep in my flat, and I was really nervous about that. So not only did they violate me, but they also made a joke about being traumatized when they knew that they had violated me. So that was great. Sorry. I feel like because we live in this society where we're told that assault only happens if it's a stranger in an alleyway, and like I said, of course that happens, but it's so much more common to happen by someone that you trust, someone that you know well, someone in your own home or someone in their home. I think it's really important that we talk about how common it is for it to be in different situations. And I also think it's really common for us to be victim blamed. People will say, why were you drinking? Why were you alone with this person? Why did you wear that? I've had all of these things said to me, and I just feel like it's really important to be someone, to be the trans sibling or to be the friend that cares, to just let you know if you've been in a similar position, that how you have felt and your experiences are valid. Oh, I feel like I'm shaking. So, yeah. If someone lies to you to try and get sex from you, and they know that the other thing that they... I don't even know how to word this. If someone lies to you to get sex when they know the alternative will make you say no, that's not consent. If someone has to put you in a compromising position, either mentally or physically, in order for you to say yes, then that is not consent. And if someone ignores your hesitations and unwillingness to say yes, that is not consent. And if someone denies your boundaries or has to beg or coerce you to say yes, then that is also not consent. And I feel like you're allowed to be angry and hurt and upset and acknowledge it for what it is. And if no one has given you permission to do that, I would like to give you permission to do that. So I don't know if that is upsetting for anyone, or I don't want to cry. Like, I feel like I have had so many of these instances. Like, the first time this happened was when I was 15, and I reached out to a teacher and I said, this has happened to me. I don't know if it was consensual or not, because I said yes eventually. And my teacher was like, I think you were just naive, and it wasn't non-consent. It wasn't like forced, even though I was begged when I had said no so many times. And I held on to that for years. That teacher said it wasn't, so maybe it's just me being sensitive. And then because it took me years to realize, when suddenly someone said that actually was not consent, I went to the police 3 years later and they said it's not worth reporting because it's been so long. And then the second time it happened was when I was 21, and this was probably the most violent one, where I had stitches from lower surgery, and it was someone that I was seeing, and I had been drinking and I was unable to move, and he did what he wanted to do. I went to the hospital to check to see if any stitches had been broken, because I still hadn't had them removed. I was that fresh out of surgery. And I went to my youth workers, explained everything. They asked me to go through everything in detail, and they said it just sounds like bad sex. And so I didn't report it again until 6 months later, when there wasn't enough evidence, or they weren't going to go ahead with it, because my text message to the perpetrator said, it's okay, don't feel bad, because I had spoken to other people and they told me that it wasn't assault. And it's just a repeat pattern of these people saying, or justifying the people that take advantage of you or coerce you into doing things, and victim blame you because you either drank too much, or you put yourself in that position, or you went camping with this person alone, and that was a terrible decision to make. And it always puts the blame on you, and so you're stuck there feeling like, why do I feel so violated? Why do I feel so hurt by this, so traumatized by this, when it was my fault? And I feel like it's just so important for someone to say that it's not your fault, because it isn't. The thing that causes assault and the R word is people R wording and assaulting. It's as black and white as that. And it just like infuriates me that so many people are just living not aware of what has happened to them because the people around them don't want to call it what it is. So it took me again in February months to realize what had actually happened, and thankfully I had friends that were like, are you aware that what happened to you wasn't consensual? And it like also sucks to hear that, because you're like, fuck, again, like how has this happened again? Why can't people just be decent? Why can't people just like care about consent? And then after I realized what had happened, I didn't want to go to the police, because I've had shit like encounters with the police. They just haven't cared enough to go forward with it. They've like talked me out of reporting it. So I was just like, well, what else is there to do? Like, I'm in therapy. I don't feel like I need antidepressants. Like, I'm just gonna have to cope on my own. But because, I don't know, my way of coping was to reach out to Survivors Network and make content on, to raise awareness of what assault was. So I thought that that would be my strategy, my way around coping, and then after I did that, then I'd get it on my system and it's fine. But a couple months passed and I was like, I'm terrified of men, I'm terrified of sex. I can't watch it on TV, I can't watch it in films, I can't like read about it. I am like so traumatized that I need help. And so I reached out to Survivors Network a couple months ago and I was like, please, can I have some help? And a couple weeks ago, or maybe a month or two ago, I had my first appointment, and then I talked about how I was feeling, and then I realized how bad I was feeling. And then I had another appointment with them where we talked about whether or not I wanted to report it, and I didn't want to go through the process of like being questioned by police. I didn't want there to be like an entire thing, because I'd been through that before, and it was 2 years of waiting for them to say there's not enough evidence, and that was just really traumatic. I don't want to go through that again, but I have found out that you can report it anonymously online, which is I think what I'm gonna do. But I think this, like, getting support and like having it all come up again has really brought me into a bit of a downward spiral, and I'm thinking about it all the time. I'm picturing this person all the time. I'm thinking about who they're friends with, if I should tell their friends, or if that's just gonna make people victim blame or like be angry or hurt. Like, I just feel like there's so much responsibility on me to keep other people safe, even though like ultimately the responsibility is with that person. They shouldn't have done it. But I'm here like disassociating and feeling upset every day and picturing them and just being so angry. So I have been disassociating a lot while I've been working. I don't know if you're like familiar with that, but for me it just feels like I can be working and doing one thing, and then suddenly I'm like zoning out. I feel like locked in my body and my vision goes blurry, and it takes so much for me to like snap out of that. So there's that. And then I've also been getting confused about what's real and what's not. Even like crossing the road, I'm like not sure if cars are there or not, and details and emails. So with work it's really hard because I'm like, has this person just said that or have they not? And it's not like big things that people are saying, like really important things. It's just details that I need to know to do my job. And I'm like, if someone says, have you done that? I'll be like, I think so, but I don't know. Like, it's just really hard to tell what is real and what isn't real, and that's really scary. Like, losing your sense of reality is just, I just feel like I'm really like out of control at the moment, and I just hate it. So I closed my shop. I don't know if you saw my post, but I closed my shop on Friday, which was really frustrating because October, November, December are my really busy months, and they're like the months you don't want to miss. And I closed my shop the day before payday, so I could have made like loads of money, covered some stuff. I could have like put money towards some therapy, but I just can't. I can't function. I keep making mistakes. I can't do things. So I closed my shop. I'm gonna ask for some time off with work, but I also feel like I'm disappointing people because like I have a job to do. I'm hired because they need that role, and I'm not gonna be able to do that. But also, if I keep doing it as I am now, I'm just gonna be making mistakes, and my colleagues are noticing that I'm not acting myself, and it just feels really like sad that I'm just struggling so much. I'm sad for myself. I'm sad for the people that it's impacting. I'm sad that I'm not myself for my friends. So it just feels really shit. And I feel like there's this weird, like, I don't even know how to explain this, but there's this weird thing where people talk about how we need to be more open about our mental health because there's an epidemic surrounding poor mental health and suicide. But it feels like when you open up about your mental health, people are like, we don't want to hear that, we just want good vibes. And I get that sometimes it's hard to hear about difficult things, but it's also hard to be in that position where you need to reach out for help. You need to be honest about how you're feeling, or you just want to be honest with your friends, but then have this guilt around you where it feels like you shouldn't be opening up because it's not professional, or people don't want to hear about it, or people think you're just looking for attention. So you're like, do people want to know that you're struggling before it gets too bad, or do people just want to say and ride the train of like, open up and talk to your friends and make sure you check in with your friends to see if they're okay? Like, where is the line between people being annoying for reaching out for help, especially help that can't be cured with like a motivational pep talk, you know? And I get that people get tired from trying to help and things not working. People aren't, your friends aren't your therapists, and your friends aren't doctors to help you. But I feel like there's like this societal thing where if someone publicly opens up about their mental health, then they'll be told that it's not professional, or it's not like, it's not the vibe. And then if something happens to them, either because they didn't reach out, or because they weren't able to access enough help, or just their mental health didn't get better and the thoughts became too overwhelming, people are like, oh, I wish I knew, I wish they opened up more. I feel like people are opening up, people are talking about it, or people are seeing that other people are opening up and talking about it, but then they're kind of like pushed down to be like, nah, it's not the time, babes, like, shut up and get on with your life, or like be a good worker, be a good professional, and don't talk about it. And then it's just like, what do people expect, you know? It's just hard to balance, I guess. So I'm struggling to like find the balance between, I want to be really transparent with people, I want to be really open about the way that I'm feeling, and I don't have time for people to tell me that it's not professional, because I know that if things got worse and if I ended up in hospital or like worse, then it would be the same people who would be like, I wish they spoke to me, I wish I knew what was going on. So I'm just like, I want to be open about how I'm feeling, and it's hard, but yeah, we're being asked to be more open as a society about our mental health, whilst at the same time being told not to be that, don't be that depressed, because then there's nothing you can do, and we want to make you feel better so that you can continue being this cog in the wheel of like capitalism. Do you know what I mean? It's just frustrating. Anyways, I can't remember what I was talking about before that rant. Yeah, so I'm gonna try and take time off my job. I've closed the shop for now. I'm gonna try and find some help with my shop, and I'm gonna apply for access to work, which I don't know if any of you have heard about this, but I heard about it recently. There's something called Access to Work in the UK, which you can apply for if you are struggling with a disability or mental health, or like ADHD, autism. I know some people consider them disabilities and some people don't. But you can apply for some funding to get support, either tech support, like software that will help you do things and organize things, or actual people to help you. So if you're really struggling, I would definitely research Access to Work. And also I was told about an organization called Team Sunflower. I don't know if this is like, I don't know if Access to Work is something that you can get in other countries, if there's similar things, but in the UK it's called Access to Work. There is an organization called Team Sunflower which will help you access that, and they will help you go through the process of applying for it and tell you what you need to know, and tell you what they're sort of like, what they need to know from you so that you do it right. I can't like recommend these things because I've not been through them yet, but this is what I'm going to do, and I thought it might be useful if any of you are struggling with things. So yeah, that's part of my like care plan to help myself get better, and I really want to treat this as like having a physical thing that I need to recover from. I feel like so many times we treat mental health as like, do we even treat mental health? Like sometimes we're prescribed an antidepressant and then just like told to continue getting on with life. But I really want to treat how I'm feeling as like very physical, because I know it will manifest into physical stuff, and I just want to honor my mental health and just like respect myself enough to like heal mentally. So I thought I would share what I'm gonna do. I am going to reach out to my therapist again. I'm gonna try antidepressants because I've been off them for about a year. I'm gonna take time off work. I'm gonna try and use TikTok less and read more, not because I don't value TikTok as like a coping strategy. I think it can be really helpful, but I just want to be away from screens a bit because I'm getting really bad headaches, and I need to find alternative distractions and coping mechanisms that aren't just like screens, because I'm basically on screens the whole time I'm awake. I want to try and get in easy food, so like instant noodles or meal prep, so that I've got food in the fridge and I don't have to spend time thinking about it. I also want to do some art because I have been enjoying it, but I only want to do it if I want to and not like force myself to monetize it. I'm gonna try and sleep as much as possible. I have medication that helps me fall asleep, so I'm gonna, at the moment I wake up at 7:30 or earlier with no fail, even if I sleep at like midnight or later. So I'm just going to try and take those meds a bit earlier so I can get a bit more sleep. And just like nap during the day. I also want to try and get more fresh air and swim. I've got a gym membership and I can go to the pool, so I can do that if I want. But I think it would be helpful to go to the beach a bit and just take in the fresh air. And I also want to make a schedule and set reminders to do things so I don't have to think as much. So like something to remind me to brush my teeth or to take my meds, because it can be quite time consuming, especially if you've got ADHD, to like remember when to do those things. I find myself just like looking at screens or looking at the time all the time to like make sure that I'm not gonna forget, you know. So I just need to like make my life as simple as possible to recover. Sorry for sniffing. Okay, so now I've got all the sad stuff out of the way. I want to talk about the good stuff. And this is something else I've been thinking about. This is where the anatomy talk comes in. So I went to pole dancing sessions alone. That was my goal for the month and I did that. It was really fun and I really liked it, and I did feel a bit like self-conscious, but like, when do I not? But yeah, my friend hasn't been going, and so I've been like the only boy in the class, and I say boy not as a like trans boy, fake boy. Like I'm doing, if you're listening to this and not watching this, I'm doing quotation marks for boy, not because I'm I'm getting myself in a tizzy. I'm not binary, so I say boy because I'm a boy light, but not because trans men aren't real men, but because I'm not a man. Does that make sense? I don't know if that's clear to everyone that I'm not binary, but everyone assumes I'm trans man. I'm not. Anyway, yeah, so I was in a class recently and we had to do this move where you had to like grip the pole like right with your crotch and like with your upper thighs, and people were really struggling to get it, and then the instructor was like, you have to push your vagina into the pole, and everyone was like laughing and like ignoring semantics. She didn't mean like anything was being inserted. She meant like you had to really like push your crotch and like squeeze. Like, I'm gonna show with my fingers if you're listening to this, but the pole like had to be right in there. So yeah, I don't know why I'm explaining this so like detailed. But yeah, she was saying that to someone else, and it kind of got me thinking like, I hope nobody felt awkward that she said that in front of me, because I feel very aware of my position in that class. I know that I'm read as male. I know that, well, I'm assuming that people don't think I'm trans, even though I do have a tattoo on my leg that says trans bodies are ethereal. I don't think people see that because I've got shorts on. I don't think people are making the connection that I'm trans, and even if they do think I'm trans and potentially have had lower surgery, I just think everyone is assuming I'm a cis man. Anyways, so I'm just very aware of like how I make other people feel in that class. I think it's a very safe space for women and non-men, so I don't want to be like encroaching on that. Anyway, I kind of wanted to be like included in that joke, and I feel like in the past I would have been like, oh, that's your joke, that's not me, because I'm like, I don't want anyone to think of me as not having a penis. But now I'm more fluid in my gender and my like how I present and my identity. I feel more open to the idea of people not seeing me as cis male. I don't know if I'm explaining this well at all, but I was kind of like rehearsing what I would say if the instructor was like, oh, but not you, Ocean, just ignore us, because I feel like sometimes people do that. But it got me also thinking about the words that I do use to refer to my anatomy, and I've kind of had this like journey to changing the words that I use to refer to my body in the last like year. And for context, I used to not want to acknowledge my lower body anatomy at all. I had no specific words that I really used for it, apart from like when I was in intimate relationships when I had to kind of acknowledge it. I would be very vague about the words that I used, and it would be like, just don't use words, just like do not perceive me, you know. And it's only been in the last year where I've been around more trans people where I felt more open to using specific words for my body. And it's just been really weird and interesting and empowering as well. And I think, let me just like get my notes up here. I think what it comes down to is when you are very involved, or like, I don't know, when you are in this cis society, cis people are everywhere, in the media, in like films where sex is portrayed, the only time we hear about vaginas, vulvas, are when we hear about women, and the only time when we hear about penises and balls and prostates are when we are talking about men. So when you're growing up with that and internalizing that, and you don't have many trans people around you, it's very like, it's natural that you're gonna see those words and think of those words as something only women have or only men have. Does that make sense? I don't know if my words are making sense, but so yeah, I think it's very like natural to feel dysphoric around those sorts of words when they're being used for our bodies, because we've only heard them as being male or female, you know? So as I started getting more trans friends last year and I became single, I started experimenting with the words that I use for my body. I think especially as I started integrating more with the trans community, I started feeling more able to use those words without judgment, both like towards myself and when I was alone, and when I was using those words around other trans people and people in general. So yeah, I have this memory of walking into a pool with a trans friend and he used the word coochie, and I thought it was so funny, but also really like nice to hear a trans guy just so openly use that word and know that it didn't take away anything from his identity. And I was there like thinking, I wish I could use that word for myself. I wish I could have fun and play around with different words for my anatomy, because I don't want to be feeling this much shame and embarrassment when I hear, even when I hear the word vulva or vagina used for anyone else. I'm like, oh, don't perceive me, don't like assume that that's what I have too, because I was just so afraid that it took away from my identity. So I started like seeing how I would feel with using certain words. And when I became single, I was on Grindr a lot, and I was like, what if I used like those words for myself when talking to other people? So I started experimenting with the word pussy. And I feel like I can't say it seriously. You know, have you ever watched Naked Attraction, when there was that woman and she said pussy in such a specific word? She was like, pussy. So anytime I say that word, I feel like I have to do the same. Anyway, I started using that word on Grindr. And I was like, this actually feels really empowering, because I'm acknowledging that word I am using that word to refer to myself. That doesn't take anything away from who I am. And I kind of liked it because I was like, yeah, what about it? I'm a man and I can use the word pussy if I want to, and that's fine. And I've seen so many people start using words like that on Instagram, like Ezra Michelle has a song about being a pussy boy, has merch called Pussy Boy, and he's talked about his journey with using words like that and how he used to feel so dysphoric, and now he uses that word to like reclaim that. And I just feel like that's so powerful, and it's kind of been similar to me in that I couldn't even acknowledge that part of my body. But then when I started exploring and experimenting with it, I think initially when I started using it behind a screen, that felt safe because it didn't matter how the other person perceived me, I could just disappear. But then that translated into when I started seeing people like in real life and using that word. And I think it took some time to get used to, and the first time I heard someone else use it after I gave them permission with me, I was like, it's fine. It's kind of hot that I can like blur the boundaries between language that we're expecting to hear for a certain gender and then apply it to ourselves when we don't fit that gender that we've been taught that word is for, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I was using that word, and then I started like opening up to using different words, like more anatomical words like vulva, vagina, labia, clit, things like that. And still sometimes I get a bit embarrassed when I say those things, but I think I really have to acknowledge where that comes from, and I think it's a mix of growing up in a misogynistic society. And I think a good example of that is when you're growing up in school, how often do you hear kids talk about penises and dicks and cocks and balls, and how often do they draw them on walls? But how often in the same way do we hear the word vagina and vulva, and how often are they drawn on walls? Just like a little joke. And I think it also says a lot when people don't even know where a clit is, and people don't even know the difference between vulva and vagina. Some people don't even know what a vulva is and why people are using that. And even in my pole class, the teacher was like, put your vagina against the pole, and like that's not her fault at all, but it's just this whole societal thing that we're kind of taught that it doesn't matter for vulva owners if we get it right, because that's not important, but we can be as specific as we want with penises and balls because that is important. So I have to acknowledge that a lot of the shame that I have felt has come from growing up in a misogynistic society, especially when I was raised female. I was raised as a girl, I was raised as a woman for a little bit, and that shame was put on me and put on a lot of other people to make us feel like we shouldn't use those specific words because that's dirty or that's gross or that's shameful. It's shameful to have that body part, and it's just like, fuck off. You know what I mean? Like, don't put that shame on me. That's your problem. Like, if you have that shame, sort it out. I don't want that shame anymore. So I'm going to use these words for myself. I'm going to reclaim them. I'm going to feel powerful in myself, however I want to express myself, whether or not I am feeling very binary, mask on one day, or if I'm feeling very fluid on another day. I can still use those words as much as I want. If I use the word pussy, if I use the word vagina, if I use the word vulva or clit or whatever, that doesn't take away my masculinity or anything about my identity, because it's just a word and it describes what I have, and it's fine. But also, I want to make it very clear that just because you don't want to use those words doesn't mean that you're part of the problem, it's a lot to unpack, a lot to unlearn, and even if you do unlearn it and unpack it and you don't want to use those words, that's fine too. I have just found it very empowering and like enlightening. I don't know if that's the right word. I've just found it very empowering to unlearn that shame that I have had put on my body and reclaim those words for myself. So, yeah, I think I just wanted to share that because I have been in that place where I've hated everything about my body, especially my lower areas, and I think it's just been really powerful to reclaim that, as I've said. I'm repeating myself now. Anyway, so if you want to get more comfortable with using the words and like see how you feel about it, I would recommend expanding your circles to have more trans people in it, either online or in person, but I think online it's a bit more easier, so taking in like social media people that use those words like Ezra Michelle, and also trans made porn can be really helpful if you're comfortable like accessing that. Even me right now, I'm struggling a bit to like, as I said before, I'm struggling a bit to access or like be around that kind of material, but I think when you're around trans content, trans people that are really confident in who they are and have no issues using those words, I think that kind of rubs off on you over time, and then you become more confident with that language in yourself. So yeah, I have talked so much, and I feel like I've had like 2 big TED Talks in this podcast, but I feel like the overarching lesson or message in this is that you deserve to have autonomy in your body, and you deserve to have the choice to do what you want with your body and not have other people dictate what your body should do. So I hope I hope it's been somewhat helpful to listen to. Or I need to stretch out my legs. Anyways, on to the goals that I set for August. One goal was to go to Pole alone. I did that twice. I haven't been for like 2 weeks just because of my mental health. I had another goal to go out for dinner alone. I didn't do that. That's fine. I wasn't in the place to. I just didn't. That's fine. It's okay. And then the third one was to cook something that I've never cooked before, and I did that a few times actually. So I've been getting a veg box. I can't remember if I said this already, but I've been getting the Riverford veg box, not Spawn, just like something I'm paying for. And I got figs and Romanesco. I got one. I don't know if you've heard of a Romanesco before, but it looks like a very pointy geometrical cross between a broccoli and a cauliflower, and I'd never eaten one. I've never really seen one in real life either, so I made fig jam with the figs, and I made like a charcuterie board, I don't know, charcuterie board, and I made Romanesco pasta, which was really nice. I made it with like olives and pine nuts and chili and garlic, and it was gorgeous. So that was that. I got asked the other day if I eat figs as a vegan because wasps will go in, I think as part of like the pollinating process, and I don't know if it's all figs, but wasps will die inside of figs. And I was like, interesting. Yeah, I will eat figs because it's part of nature rather than something that humans are forcing them to do. I think if it's different, I'm open to learning, but I just thought that was interesting. Any other fellow vegans want to have their say in that, let me know. But yeah, just thought it was interesting. And then my goals for August are to make a care plan and just recover. Honestly, yeah, those are my only 2 goals. I think I just want to be really kind to myself this year. or this month. That was the perfect example of how my brain is just not working. So yeah, just rest, make a care plan, be good to myself, and be a brave Tran. I've got this, and everyone else has this too. So I hope you're okay. I'm sorry if this was... I'm also not sorry. I need to stop saying sorry. I appreciate this might have been a really difficult podcast to listen to. If it's been really hard for you, then please look after yourself. But I also hope it's been nice in some way, and this is another reminder that I'm here as support, and like, this is just a gentle hug, either physical if you want one, or emotional if you're not like a huggy person. But I'm sending so much love to you, so much care, so much like gentle reassurance that you have got this and you're gonna be okay, and you are a wonderful person. So yeah, thanks so much for supporting me here. I really appreciate it, and I'm just sending you my love. That's all. Okay, I'll see you next month. Goodbye.